believe it or not, milk, papayas, diet sodas, and your favorite kind of chips all contain some common components. You will always be told when the product you're buying does not contain these ingredients, but never told when they do. GMOs play an important role in our modern agricultural society, and yet most people you ask couldn't even tell you what that acronym stands for. According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, over 90% of the crops that we planted in 2018 were genetically modified organism crops, or GMO crops. That's a mouthful, I know, both to say and to ingest. As long as I can remember, my mother has been adamant about avoiding GMO crops. Most of the food we ingest is natural or free range or organic, and so I decided to do some research into what exactly it was my mother was trying so hard to avoid. In a video, Jimmy Kimmel, the talk show host, shared about how he sent a film crew to a Los Angeles farmer's market and asked people what a GMO really was. The results? Only one of the individuals interviewed could correctly answer the question. I'm here so that you can confidently respond to, what is a GMO? And to do that, we'll have to take a look firstly at the history of genetically modified organisms, secondly, why on earth we use them, and thirdly, what impacts their use is having on our world. To start, we'll do a bit of time travel. Genetically modified organisms have a longer history than you may expect. From the beginning of time, people have been crossbreeding different plants and animals. But genetic engineering as we know it has its roots in 1866 with a familiar science experiment involving peas. Gregor Mendel, a curious monk, crossbred two separate kinds of peas and discovered the genetic process that you and I still study in high school. This is, as Stanley Chen explains in his 2015 article on bioengineering, the most basic form of genetic modification, which is called hybridization. As the years passed, more experiments were performed, and in 1972, as the Science History Institute explains, Herbert Boyer and Stanley Cohen officially invented genetic engineering. Cool. Awesome, Sophia. What does that mean? Well, David Bodine at the National Human Genome Research Institute broadly defines the process of genetic modification as taking strands of DNA and combining them with other strands of DNA. The key difference, though, between Mendel's experiments and those of Boyer and Cohen is that the ancient tradition of crossbreeding is only possible between two organisms of the same species. I'll let you in on a little secret. You're the result of crossbreeding. But true genetic modification involves DNA from two different species of organisms, like pigs and butterflies, but more practically, corn and soil proteins. So why would you want to combine the amino acids found in dirt with the corn you eat? Well, I'm glad you asked. Though it seems like a strange idea, there were grand plans behind the invention of genetic modification. If you break it down, there are essentially three goals. Picture it like a create your character situation in a video game, except you're building a seed. The first of these goals is to increase the resilience of an organism. Thanks to genetic modification, it's a possibility that genes with resistance to drought or infestation can be added to a crop. Let's take apples. And it's also possible to increase the size and rate of growth of those apples. Take a look at this image and try to guess which one of the red delicious is genetically modified. I'll tell you. This one is organic. This one, the larger, juicier, shinier, honestly, it's just better looking, is the genetically modified one. But a bigger and better product wasn't the only goal of genetic modification. The United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, claims that bioengineered food may actually have higher nutritional content because of the increased added genes. And thirdly, genetic modification leads to higher profit for the farmer, and this was one of the driving factors behind its invention. Production costs are cut drastically if your crop will still thrive with less water or if you don't have to spray it with pesticides. In their report on the impacts of GMO crops from 2013, Klumper and Quaim say that the average profit gains for a genetic modification adopting farmer were 69%. That's a huge increase. And there's even a way to genetically modify food so that it has a longer shelf life, resulting in less waste, but more importantly, higher profit. As illustrated in this low quality image, the genetically modified RNAi beta hex tomatoes were relatively unchanged after 45 days. On the other hand, the non-genetically modified tomatoes, they grew moldy and shriveled. So as you can see, there were grand plans behind the invention of genetic modification. But now we have to ask, what impacts are these grand plans having on our world? Many of the impacts of producing and consuming genetically modified organisms are yet undiscovered, but there are a few which are beginning to surface, both positive and negative. One clear benefit to genetic modification is, as I shared previously, the longer shelf life, which ultimately results in a decrease in waste. Less produce is lost to pest and mold, and then on the next level up, once it's in stores and then consumers' homes, the food is more likely to be eaten because it appears to stay fresh for longer. In this photo is shown a traditional golden delicious apple in comparison with the entirely lab-grown Arctic apple. As you can see, even in this low pixel rendering, the Arctic apple has been successfully modified to resist oxidation. Ultimately, this results in less food waste. Because let's be honest, when was the last time you intentionally ate a browned apple? While there are clear benefits to GMOs, it's also important that there may be some health risks involved. Tanis Mizik with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations shared in 2018 that the process of developing an organism which is resistant to pests actually involves creating the possibility for that organism to produce its own pesticides. And those toxins enter your body when you consume a genetically modified product. The results of ingesting these chemicals are debated, but there seems to be evidence both for the fact that there are no consequences and also that for some individuals there could be great health risks. So as you can see, there are both indisputable benefits to GMOs and some things to keep in mind if you're going to consume them. So now you know what GMO stands for, genetically modified organism crop, and you can sound smart in front of all your friends when they ask. In addition, you hopefully understand the reasons behind why we use genetically modified organisms and what impacts they have, the benefits, and some of the drawbacks. Bioengineering will surely become only a bigger issue as time goes on, and more experiments are performed on more organisms. There's already an ABC News article about the frankenfish, a genetically modified salmon, and yes, it is edible. Actually, I don't think we're far from a situation kind of like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Lab-grown spaghetti, anyone?